I apologize for speaking in English. Secondly, I'm very excited to be able to collaborate with the team here and bring this exhibition to Bogota. It's very important to Francis that it be seen in a Latin American venue for a Latin American audience, and we're very happy that that occasion is here in Colombia. You will all shortly have the chance to see the exhibition. What I'm going to try and do here this morning is sketch out some of the ideas that inform the work rather than just describing the work, so that when you see the exhibition you will have the opportunity to have a little bit of the background that I think Francis was thinking of in making the work, and give you some context. It's actually quite disturbing to talk about his work with the artist sitting immediately to my left, but please jump in and correct me, Francis, if I get on the wrong track. The theme, the exhibition covers work from pretty much all the way through Francis's career. Not every body of work, though, that he has made is included. It's not a full retrospective of his work in that sense. Instead, out of conversations that we had over a period, we agreed that the exhibition would focus on a theme, or a kind of constellation of themes that run through a great deal of his work, and it seemed possible to bring together quite a wide range of work that would cohere around the theme of rehearsal. So the title and the basic theme of the exhibition is the idea of rehearsal, and one of the key aspects of rehearsal for Francis is not just that the idea of rehearsal and repetition and going back over something you have done before is a key part of the way he works. It's also, in some ways, an allegorical or metaphorical way of talking about the relationship of an American or Western European idea of modernity and the oscillation between the acceptance of modernity and the resistances to modernity. So there is an underlying idea that modernity is something that is always being launched and always being rehearsed, and somehow never quite coming to the quasi-utopian goal in the end. But it's also characteristic of the way Francis works. He is someone who goes back into work that he's already made. He will keep drawings in the studio for many years, continue working on them. There's a kind of resistance to finality in his work that is quite different from the way, in some ways, perhaps earlier generations of artists would make a work and complete the work and move on to another work. For Francis, I think all his bodies of work are part of an ongoing conversation between him and his audience, where there can be a kind of back and forth, and different contexts for the work create different avenues of looking at it, different ways of thinking about it. One of the other ways that Francis works is through framing the work in the context of a number of aphorisms or sayings that contextualize the work and enable seemingly quite different works to be read in within a certain context. And some of the aphorisms that are most relevant to this show that you can, in a way, bear in mind as you look at the work in due course are maximum effort, minimum result. Sometimes making something leads to nothing, and sometimes doing nothing leads to something. And all of these aphorisms inform the work that we deal with in the exhibition. And as I said, there's a reluctance in Francis. The idea of rehearsal is strongly related to a great reluctance in Francis's work overall to really bring anything to a final, definitive conclusion. All of the certain ideas and motifs are kept open. They're always available to be pushed in new directions and reconfigured for new situations. In addition, he has consistently embraced a durational element in his work. They exist over time. Not only do they take place, some of them are records of performance that took place over a long time. Many of them are videos that take a certain amount of time to view. But more explicitly, he sees the work as a sort of discursive argument that is composed of episodes, metaphors, or parables, and in particular staging the experience of time in Latin America in particular. The idea of rehearsal always contains within it an idea of what the finished work might possibly be. In some ways, this is a kind of Platonic ideal in that we never possibly get to the final, definitive, finished version of the work. What we get is a kind of endless series of iterations of progress towards what that ideal might be. As in a musical work or a theatrical work, if a work is still in rehearsal, then by definition it has never achieved its final form yet. There is always more that can be done to alter or perfect the performance, and I think that in many ways Francis regards all of his work as in some ways still being in rehearsal, still being open to further recontextualization, further twists in the story. One of the things that I noticed working on the exhibition early on is that is the question of titles. Anyone who has tried to study Francis Alÿs's work rapidly comes up against the fact that the very concept of the title is quite fluid for him. It's not surprising that the works have both Spanish and English titles, but the titles have also changed over time. The same title is sometimes given to different works. Some works seem to have multiple titles. A number have their official title, but also their nicknames or informal titles for the work. And the dates themselves of the work are also sometimes quite slippery, and a work that seems to have been dated 1 year can sometimes be re-extended into the present and thus take on a new date. Thus, all of these things that we associate with the very concept of the work of art, that it has a medium, a title, a date, all of these things in Francis's work are quite mutable and subject to change. One of the other ways that he avoids a kind of didactic finality in his work is to use the technique of storytelling. I described it as parables earlier, but it's also anecdotes, the kind of urban legends or myth that are passed on in oral culture, and stories that are told from one person to another. These stories themselves, however, tend not to be fully realized narratives with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Instead, Alÿs is attracted to fragments of stories almost, moments snatched in media res. Stories or incidents as they might be experienced by a passerby. You're walking down the street and you see something is going on in the street, and you weren't there when the incident began, and maybe you have to leave before the incident is over, but you see that something is going on. You participate in it as a looker or even as a participant, and then you